Hi everyone, welcome to the Where To podcast, where we will answer all of your Where To questions. We are here to discuss mental health and resiliency with you in order to help you live the best life possible. Let's get started. Welcome to our second episode of Where To with PFH Prevention. I'm Kylie.
I'm April.
And I'm Cory.
And April and I are crisis counselors with Missouri Show Me Hope Crisis Counseling Program.
And today we will be discussing where to find resources within the PFH Prevention Department with prevention specialist Cory Esslinger.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some fun questions at the beginning. Our first question is, what is the dumbest way you've ever been injured?
Well, I would have to say probably back when I was like in fourth grade. The fun, what do you call those, swing sets? Yeah. And they have like the two-seater glider on it. You stand in the middle of it, hold the top. My finger got a little too close to the thing that went back and forth, pinched my finger, took a chunk out. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Wow. Sounds traumatic.
It was great. No, I mean, fourth grade, so you can only imagine pain, being over dramatic, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe looking back now, I don't even remember it really besides it actually happening. So
Yeah.
when we talk about resiliency and things like that with kids, yeah, it's just a memory now.
April, what about you?
Oh, I can't really think of anything that would be completely stupid. I remember one time when I was in, I think maybe kindergarten, I literally ran head on into this other kid, and I had like the worst bloody nose, and it was such a traumatic event. So I guess that could count as something pretty stupid. I don't know. What you got, Kylie?
Mine's really dumb. It was, I think it was junior year of high school, and it was the last soccer game of the season. And my teammate was not looking up. She was dribbling the soccer ball, and she just crashed into me, and she gave me a concussion and a broken nose. And her dad was my history teacher, and I had to miss his test the next day because his daughter. But it was horrible. But my nose broke evenly, so I didn't need surgery or anything. It
So
just
no
bump. It healed itself instantly. But I was out of sports for like 6 weeks. It was bad. Yeah.
Our next fun question for the week is, what food is delicious but also a pain to eat? I guess I'll go ahead and go first with that one and say oranges. I love oranges and they're so good, but I hate peeling them.
Yeah. Stinginess is horrible.
Yes.
Make wet wipes.
This is true.
That is very true. Mine is pineapple. I hate that you're eating it and it's also like eating you. Which is like not right. It's not right, but it's like the enzymes break down and then it gives you that feeling that it's just, I don't know, but I enjoy eating it. But it's a hassle.
Fresh pineapple is so good.
It is.
Well, I'll stick with the messy theme. Barbecue ribs.
That was another one that I thought of, barbecue
Very
ribs.
great, but very messy.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a proper way to eat them besides just pick them up and eat them with your hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So, very great, but very messy.
True. Well, now that you guys have learned a little bit more about us, we'll get into some of our information. So like we said at the beginning, we'll be answering some of the questions of where to get resources or information just from the prevention department here at PFH or Preferred Family Healthcare. So to kind of get started, Cory, how long have you been here and what's your job title?
I'm going on about 6 years and did a year in treatment. So, I mean, I guess I've been with the company for almost 7, but right now I'm in a prevention specialist role and service. We cover 27 counties in our department, but we've got 9 counties per specialist. So I have the northwest part of the state, so includes Atchison, Holt, Nottoway, Buchanan, Andrew, Clinton, DeKalb, Gentry, and Worth counties.
Okay.
So
Cool. In your own words, what does a prevention specialist mean to you?
That's a hard one to explain. So we wear many hats, but I'd say one of the biggest things for me is being able to change kind of the community norms or the social norms, and make each community kind of their own unique world, the best that it could be. So each one's very uniquely dynamic and different. So everything from one side of the state to the other, very different in the way politics, their social norms, even some of their data. So, we look at data a lot, and one of the things that differs is the youth substance use. One side of the state may have a high opioid concern, where the other side of the state it may be alcohol or marijuana. And so trying to find a way to make each one very adaptive to their community, and being able to be a part of that bigger picture is really cool. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
I know you noticed, or you mentioned your service area is kind of adapting to changes and kind of changing as things happen. In the Showing Hope Crisis Counseling Program, we focus a lot on resiliency. And obviously that's like the ability to adapt to changes, bounce back from things that are going on. What are some ways that your service areas have adapted to what's happened during the pandemic and everything with COVID? How have they changed their approaches or maybe the populations that they reach? How has that impacted them?
So a lot of them, at least in my service area, went very dormant during the pandemic, but they adapted in the manner of providing a lot more virtual assistance. Rather it was via social media or, of course, telehealth that's really become very popular and expanded. And some of that's due to, insurance changing and allowing billable services via that network. But, a lot of it is reaching the kids where they're at. So one of my coalitions, they, instead of having the teen center that they operate open and up and going, they started meeting the kids at the school. So they still got the information, but they were able to work with the schools to make sure they still received that prevention material, just in a different light. And so that was very unique for them. And they wanted to ensure that their kids were still getting the messaging and the information. Yeah. So that was one way to do it.
That's awesome. I'm sure, a lot of people have never experienced something, we've all went through for the past year. So I think that means a lot for people to be able to grow and change and adapt and still get those services out there, because it's definitely not been easy.
Yeah. What do you think has been one of the greatest challenges kind of on top of that with your job, with like the past year?
So I mean, in our job, we were very fortunate. I think we were ahead of the curve quite a bit when it came to technology. So that allowed us to really almost lead the others in our communities, coalitions, and groups on how to adapt. So some of the barriers there were very difficult, because some of our communities are very rural. And as we talk about, resources and things available, one of those being internet, a simple thing that we all take for granted. I think sometimes in these rural areas, they're very difficult to get services out there, to be able to do the simple networking, via virtual platforms. So that was a struggle for us in trying to meet those times in the pandemic when we couldn't be together in person. So
yeah. A question that we probably should ask at the beginning for all you listeners: what is a coalition?
Yeah, so a coalition is one, it looks different for everybody, but typically it is a group of interested individuals that come together for the same vision or mission in a community. And that community is defined differently depending on where you're at. It could be at a town level, it could be at a county level. And so typically you have the stakeholders in your community. So somebody from law enforcement, somebody from a volunteer basis, a parent, things like that, government, local government, whether that's a mayor or a council member or something like that, all sitting and coming to the same table to do something in their community. And with prevention that we're focused on, it's usually towards substance use with youth, mental health, things in that nature. So,
how easy would it for a community member to start a coalition?
yeah, so it's very, very simple. Simple, but a lot on your plate. So one of the big things that we try to focus in on when we're going into an area that we're not familiar with is finding that champion. So, and that's usually the hardest thing. We have a lot of people that want to be part of something, but nobody that really steps out and says, I'm going to head this and I'm going to take responsibility. Because it is a lot, especially if you're already working 40 plus hours a week and then to try to take on something on the side. So a lot of the times we look for the person that an ideal coalition leader would be, passion driven. If they can do it as part of their job, that is awesome. Such as like health departments, some of our health departments have stepped up to the plate and aligned what they're doing with the public health, mental health pandemic with COVID. Well aligns with some of the stuff that coalitions can work on in their community. So they've kind of stepped up, become the leader. And then in other communities, we've got people that are just very passionate because maybe they were impacted personally by suicide, by mental health, by substance use. And so they want something better for their community. So, usually when it's driven by passion, it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah.
Though, there's the fun perks as well. Once you start a coalition, there's funding to help do activities, do media campaigns. But we know that the best solution to solve the world's greatest problems is changing our environment and advocating. So those require the most work too. Getting out, being active, being a voice for your cause. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but if some place is already doing it, or you want to get something like that going, it's very easy. You reach out to us if you're in our area, or in your local area. We've got 10 PRCs, I believe, across the state. So, if we're not one that services your area, then you're able to reach out locally, find out who your PRC is, which is your Prevention Resource Center. And let them know, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I would like to make a coalition out of it. And it's a pretty painless process from there. So
that's awesome.
So here in the prevention department, we hear quite a bit about protective factors. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what those are and what might be important to be present in a community?
Yeah, so that protective factors also kind of go hand in hand with risk factors. And risk factors, we'll start there. That's probably the easiest connection to bridge kind of that gap. But risk factors typically put you doesn't say that you're going to have something, but it says that you're at a higher risk to have whatever it may be, whether it's a health condition or, when we talk about addiction, there's certain things that put you at a higher risk for addiction. And so those things are prevalent all across the board, no matter where you're at. And a lot of that can be peers, that can be family, a lot of things like poverty and stuff like that put you at just a disadvantage from the get-go, which means that you're more likely to do or have certain things. And then on the flip side of that, you have your protective factors, so things that may make it less likely for you to have health conditions or addiction concerns or things like that. And some of those protective factors could be anything from going back to family norms, so feeling connected to family. One of the biggest ones that we look at with protective factors is having a trusted adult. So simply put, having somebody you can go to and talk to. And we think back to childhood and even growing up now as young adults. Who is that person? Who can you go to and just talk? And that's one of the biggest protective factors there, as well as school systems, depending on what they have in place, such as we run a couple different programs from our prevention department in schools, and so having those well-rounded evidence-based curriculums in schools that put kids at less likely to try or even start substances. So we consider that a protective factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think with listing or describing what protective and risk factors are, it's a way for the listeners to kind of like evaluate where their community is at. Like where are your risk factors? What do you think the risk factors are? And then what are the protective factors that can be established in your community too? And you can also go on Search Institute, and there's a lot of materials on there with protective factors. Yeah.
Is there anything else, Cory, that you would like to add?
Well, I think I could go on forever.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we look at that I didn't mention on risk factors, because we talked about the number one protective factor. So everybody's like, oh, do I have that? Check. Well, when we look at risk factors, what's the number one risk factor? Do you guys know?
I don't think I know.
I put them on the spot. So when we look at it, it's trauma. And trauma can be defined very different for each individual. So we could look at things such as natural disasters. So we think about the pandemic. We think about floods. All those things could be very traumatic to each individual. And so when we look at risk factors and think of trauma, it could be something as simple as losing a pet or a loved one. And so we have to really know when we're stepping into that to take on that responsibility, whether it's as a prevention specialist, as it's a community member, whoever it may be, that handle with care mindset. Because we never know what somebody else could be going through.
Yeah.
And so keeping that in mind, but also with youth, resiliency is built in. Youth are resilient from the get-go. So that's one thing they always have on their side growing up and developing. So everybody's like, oh, well, they lost this. They're resilient. So odds are they're going to bounce back, but it's how we adapt and tune into those situations and learn from them and grow, I think is what makes us resilient and part of that bigger development to be better in our communities. So.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Cory. You obviously had a lot of helpful information, and if anybody out there has any interest in maybe finding more information about a community coalition or how to get one started, you can always email moprevention@pfh.org. Reach out to us on any of our various platforms. Before we conclude today, we'll talk about our upcoming events.
Yeah, so we have some upcoming events on June 4th, Friday, June 4th, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. There's the Kirksville Art Walk in downtown Kirksville, and we will have a booth. We, meaning the CCP individuals, will have a booth set up where you can come and show us what hope means to you. We also have the Prevention Mental Health Awareness 5K walk every Friday in May, and we have those online videos. So you can find us on Facebook, and they're live, and then you can watch them, of course, after they're published on Facebook. And we also have our prevention party in the park, which is a really big event that we're planning on throwing on July 10th from 12 to 2. So if you're interested in any of those, you can find all of this information on our Facebook or email us, like April said, at moprevention@pfh.org. Thank you for joining us this week. We hope to see you 2 weeks from now. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast on Where To. This podcast was brought to you by Preferred Family Healthcare Prevention. For more information about PFH Prevention, please visit our Facebook page at Preferred Family Healthcare Prevention. You can also find our YouTube page at Prevention PFH, or email us at moprevention@pfh.org. See you next time!